Community Consolidated School District 46 Board of Education meeting Wednesday, June 26th. We had a little technical difficulty, so we are starting at 6:04 p.m. I need a call to order with a roll call, please.
Mack. Braden. Here. Nash. Absent. Albert. Absent. LaCroix.
Here.
Miller. Absent. Weedman.
Okay, thank you. We've got a quorum. Please join me for the pledge. Okay, I need a motion to approve this evening's agenda, please.
I'll move.
Okay.
Mack.
Aye.
Weedman. Braden.
Aye.
And LaCroix.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Does not look like we have any public comments signed up, so I'm going to move right along to the board reports. You can start down here with Mr. LaCroix this evening.
None for me tonight, thank you.
Mrs. Braden?
I was not at the Juneteenth celebration, but I wanted to make sure it gets acknowledged because Ms. Nash isn't here. So if there's someone else that's going to acknowledge it, great. I just don't want it to get lost because I'm sure it was amazing.
It was. It was a great event that Mrs. Nash and Mrs. Albert worked on in conjunction with the library and the Heritage Center, all the volunteers. It was a hot day, but it was a really wonderful event. So kudos and congratulations to them again. I look forward to that annual event. Two quick things from me. We did have the executive committee meeting here for the IASB board of directors, I guess. They meet one time per year to decide on the two dinners that we go to in the fall and in the spring. The fall theme is, as far as I can tell, going to be a legislative dinner, a little bit different than we're used to in terms of a dinner type of event with a speaker, and it's going to involve perhaps going to a different choice of legislators who attend and talking about different topics based on that legislator and what's being worked on in Springfield. So that should look a little bit different. And then the one for the spring would go back to a speaker of some sort, and they might do that as an alternating style going forward for that. We met here in the Falcon Room, so thank you again to the whole team here who made that happen. And we had, again, it's just one meeting per year, and that's all that gets decided. I also had an opportunity to attend the first Board Presidents Academy that IASB is running, and that one was down in Naperville last week. Probably about 150 board presidents attended, either board presidents or somebody who had been a board president or whatever combination thereof. And they talked about the main focus of that meeting was Robert's rules of meetings, and we seem to really do well on that, learn some different tips if any of us get out of order and we have to like call for your removal. I didn't mean to look in that direction. But what was interesting is there are some boards that do have that issue quite frequently. And then they had a couple of other speakers as well. And I had sent you all an email if you wanted to subscribe to that one weekly digest from one of the speakers, which was kind of a national level thing on school issues. So it was a great thing. I think they're going to try to do that regularly each year. That was the first one. There were a lot of cicadas down in Naperville. That's it. Mr. Weedman. That's right. That's right. You are out of order. Okay. All right. Thank you. I hand it over to Dr. Glickman for the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Well, I think first of all, we'd like to congratulate Mr. Weedman on becoming a grandfather. I know, but I want to congratulate you. Last week we had our leadership retreat. We talked with you a little bit about that ahead of time. And this year we joined together with Lake Villa School District 41 to learn with each other and from each other. It was a really wonderful day of learning, mostly put together by Amy Gluck and also the Director of Teaching and Learning over in District 41. They put it together. And so I'm going to have Amy share a little bit about what we did, but before she does that, I just want to mention, I told her that I was going to embarrass her a little bit, so sorry, I've already embarrassed Mr. Weedman. So board, I don't know to what extent you are aware that Mrs. Gluck is a sought-after trainer nationwide, actually, for the work of PLCs, professional learning communities. And so we are a recipient of that training that she has. And so much of the work that we did a week ago last Monday, was around that topic. And so we're just really very lucky and very blessed to have her right here in our district providing that training for us. And so I'm going to hand it off to you to talk about what we did.
Thanks. So good evening, and yes, you did embarrass me a little bit there, so. It was a lot of fun to plan with Vic White, who is my role over in District 41, and we really wanted to spend some time talking about leadership and how to use our leadership skills in order to support our staff. And so one of the first things that we did, and Vic led us through this, was we talked about leadership characteristics, and it was based on the 7 habits of highly effective people. And so we talked about how does that apply to our leadership roles. He added an 8th characteristic as well. And then how we can support our teacher leaders in those roles too. So spent some good amount of discussion on that. And then we moved into talking more about professional learning communities, but really spent time talking about our mission, vision, and values from our districts. And how do our beliefs that we have within our district mission, vision, and values align to the work we do and the actions that we see within our classrooms and with our conversations that we have as leaders. And so spent some time talking about that, and then moved into how do we support the work of our teams. And left with, I think, some really great ideas from the leadership teams. That everyone was really engaged and walked away with some tools that I think everyone's going to be able to use in planning for next school year. So it was super exciting, and happy to have led it. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. We're going to talk for a moment about registration. So board members, you've probably seen some communication that's come out from us about it's time to register your child for school. In fact, it's been time for a little while. Amanda Pelser, our Director of Innovation, has been guiding us through a really important question and a discussion about this topic. And we've made some changes in what we're doing with some really outstanding results. And so I'd like her to share that.
Thank you for not embarrassing me either.
This time.
This time. So as you can imagine, like Lynn said, registration is a really important part of the planning for next year process. Knowing who's going to be showing up on the first day helps us to have the right amount of staff and the right amount of resources. And so we've been working as a leadership team to kind of try and address our low registration numbers. As you know, and voted on, we moved up to the last day of school, the early bird registration cutoff. And so we think that was helpful. We've also made a decision to not send your class assignment or your schedule if you haven't registered when everybody else gets that. And to really communicate that, we've had our building secretaries reach out directly to make that personal connection with families to remind them to register. So at the beginning of June, we were about 38% of students, registered. And today we're at 79%. So that is a huge help. And we're able to have some conversations to really make sure we have what kids need ready for them. And so I just want to say thank you to building administration and secretaries for doing that work, and hopefully we'll continue to make it better next year too.
Thank you. And I just want to point out, it's very easy for us sometimes to say, well, this is a problem that's not solvable, it's always been like this. And sometimes it just asks someone asking the right question and saying, hey, can we maybe look at it a little bit differently to make an enormous difference with kind of a small tweak, so thank you for that, Amanda. And then I wanted to mention that tomorrow is the last day of our June summer school programs. We do have Jumpstart Kindergarten over at Avon in July, but tomorrow and summer school for everything else, all of our other programs, except for the one online program, yeah. I've had the opportunity to visit all of the programs, and board, I just wanted to share with you that I have been enormously impressed with the rigor that has been present and the just the high level of engagement. You know, our students went right from school ending on Friday to hello, summer school on Monday, and you wouldn't know it. They weren't dragging their feet. They were filled with energy, but in a way that was manageable, and teachers just really providing them with some robust experiences through school. So I wanted to share that with you. It's really nice to see. And thank you very much, Dr. Lorenzo, for the program that you are guiding, and Dr. Diaz for the program you are guiding, and of course, under your leadership as well. So good stuff. And that's it for the superintendent's report tonight.
Thank you, everybody. That moves us to the consent agenda. I need a motion to approve this evening's consent agenda, including the personnel addendum report that was sent earlier.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Consent agenda approved. We have a few action items here to take this evening before we move on to the other discussions. The first one is a motion to approve the fiscal year 2024-2025 tentative budget and publish a legal notice for the public hearing. I need a motion for that.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, any additional comments or questions about that? Okay.
Weedman. Mack,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
and LaCroy.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. The second item is a motion to approve the exempt employee compensation. I'll move.
I'll second that.
Any additional comments or questions from the board? Oh, okay.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. The third item is a motion to approve, I need a motion to approve the intergovernmental agreement regarding the use and maintenance of property with the Round Lake Park District.
I'll move.
I'll second. Any additional comments or questions? Okay.
Mack,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. The next one, I need a motion to approve the engagement agreement for the interim director of operations and maintenance with Gawalt Hamilton Associates. Need a motion for that?
I'll move. Second that.
Okay.
Do you want an
Yes, go ahead.
explanation
Yes,
of
please,
that?
go ahead. Dr.
Certainly. So, board, you'll remember that in the spring, we brought aboard Scott Gonke from GHA to serve as our interim director of operations, and he's been doing a wonderful job, so thank you for that, Mr. Gonke. Rather than searching for a new permanent director of operations and maintenance for the 24-25 school year at a rather late date, we have elected to continue with interim leadership for the 24-25 school year. And so this contract that we brought to you brings forth the services of Mr. Gonke, continuing along, but part-time, as he has been part-time, along with a second member of GHA. His name is Steve Miller. And so Mr. Gonke and Mr. Miller would be working in tandem, kind of each of them taking on different responsibilities for the leadership of our leadership of our operations and maintenance department, helping us assess where we need to go next as a school district in that department so that we can move forward in the future with some strength. So we are really excited to share this with you. Mr. Miller would be able to join us beginning the second week in July. And between these two gentlemen, we would have virtually full-time coverage with directors in that department. Any questions for me or for Mr. Gonke? Yes.
Is it clear, you kind of touched on it, but is it clear how you'll split responsibilities, or are you going to be siloed? Are you going to be working on the same thing? Are you going to be responsible for X, Y, and Z, and Steve responsible for?
That is a great question. So the answer is going to be, I'm going to get Steve in here, we're going to spend some time together, and then we'll talk about dividing the roles and how we're going to conquer, right? There needs to be, I think for the sake of the facilities department itself, there needs to be consistency, and they need to be comfortable with the changes. So I want to make sure that happens before we separate and he takes 3 days and I take 2 days, or whatever it ends up being, so.
So the answer is TBD.
Yes,
TBD with a meeting already scheduled.
yes.
So there you go.
Okay.
Okay. Mack,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. And finally, I need a motion to approve the contract with Forward Edge as presented to us.
I'll move.
I'll second. Any questions or comments from the board on that? Okay.
Braden,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and LaCroy.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. That moves us to our strategic goals update. I will hand it over to the team.
Hold on. We're checking something. Thank you. Yes? All right. Board, we're here tonight to talk with you about the work that we as a school district have done related to our strategic plan goals, along with the work that is upcoming in the 24-25 school year. And I do want to note that later on in this board meeting, there's a discussion about future strategic planning. And so keep that in mind as we think through the work that we are doing in the upcoming year. There's our mission. It was created when we originally created our strategic plan: empowering learners, creating equity, cultivating community, and all of these goals are responsive to all of this entire mission. It will be very clear. All right, and I'm realizing that I bet not one of us brought a printed copy of this. Great, we can't read it. All right, fantastic.
I might just move closer.
All right, maybe we're just gonna move the whole, yes, one moment.
Sorry. Let me just move this for us.
That seems good.
We're just going to stand in the middle of the room.
Yeah, we actually could. You know what, board, that will be better. So this is an ad hoc kind of a day. We're going to come back to our seats so that we can speak with clarity of vision, literally, as we talk about our strategic plan goals. Oh, my goodness. We did rehearse it. There's always an answer.
There's always an answer. So I'm going to start us with our curriculum goal, number 1. Okay. So this is probably the goal that has the most in it in the entire strategic plan. So I'm going to probably be talking for a little bit here. But this first goal is to review and update teaching, learning, and assessment practices and materials through an equity lens to create culturally responsive learning environments. So you'll notice that there are lots of things that fall under this. So I'm going to talk about them in order. And you can also see the color coding goes with the different years. We did, in order to provide clarity on the map, we did remove 21, 22 items that we've already shared with you when we shared the strategic plan update last year. So that first one there is the equity work, and we created an equity action plan based on that equity audit that we had. We've shared that equity action plan with you here at the board meetings, and then we spent time this year implementing that. We started implementing it last year when we made it, and we continued implementing it this year. So that was through staff meetings, through job-alike conversations, and lots of different things that fall under that equity plan. And I think we just shared that with you, our update on that a few meetings ago as well. So in addition to that, where we're continuing to move forward is we're investigating some of our instructional practices to provide inclusivity for all. So what does that mean is that we are really working to ensure that all of our students have access to high levels of learning, so grade level or higher, and that we are supporting instruction in that way. So as we're continuing this work, we're going to continue to work with our staff on how we can help to support all of our learners within general education first, and then provide any supports that they need in addition to that. In the last piece under this same column is to establish consistency in service delivery and instructional decision making, and all of that is all part of our opportunities review that we shared with you at a previous board meeting as well, where Heather's working with student services, and we're really looking at our supports for services and placement and how we're best supporting student needs. And having consistency across all our buildings in that. That next column there is about understanding cultural responsiveness, and we have been providing some professional development to district staff. We did that last school year, the 22-23 school year, and developed some awareness for the school community around that as well. We did some of that work, both these next columns kind of overlapped a little bit in that work that we did, some of that with Dr. Bolton. In addition, we're updating our school environments and looking at how are we providing culturally responsive environments for our students. And then our continued work is going to be that we're going to form a planning and design team in order to look at the culturally responsive teaching and leading standards, and those are provided to us through the state of Illinois, through ISB. So those are, that committee is, that PDT is going to spend some time unpacking those and looking at those, and then providing information back to and with our staff. There will be staff part of that committee in order to help us with that work. That next column there then is understanding of trauma-informed instruction. In 22-23, we spent time providing some professional development. Again, that was some of our work that we did with Dr. Doug Bolton, and developing awareness for the school community. Some of the things that Dr. Bolton shared with us were some strategies that we could be utilizing within our classrooms and with our students, and so we worked on some implementation of that this year, and then continued some professional development that was focused on that fell under that umbrella of social emotional learning. As we continue this work, we're going to continue some professional development and best practices in social emotional learning. One of the things also I think that really fit into this as well was the class meetings that we implemented at the K-4 level with our SEL coaches supporting that as well. For curriculum review, in 22-23, we provided professional development for K-8 literacy and 6-8 health, as we had new implementation for both of those areas with Scholastic and ETR. We unpacked, the state had come out with some new social science standards, so we unpacked those and had lots of conversation about what do those mean. And then we formed a science PDT, planning and design team, in order to look at and review potential new resources. And as you know, we brought a new resource to you last school year. And then this year we, and as well, I guess, and we implemented that new resource this school year. And then in the 22-23 school year, we also unpacked the health standards through the health PDT, through a planning and design team there too. This school year, we reviewed what available resources we have under in the area of social science, and talked about were there feasible options related to social science materials. And what we actually found as we did that work is there were no feasible options for us. Those materials are constantly changing and looking at cost of some of those and what the new social science standards are, which is a lot around inquiry. There are other materials that we already have in place that we can continue to utilize in order to support that learning. And then in addition to that, this school year, we formed a math planning and design team. As we've mentioned, our contract with our current math resources is up at the end of the 24-25 school year. So we started that work this year to start talking about the Illinois math standards, and then starting to have some conversation for review for possible adoption for the 25-26 school year. So we're going to continue that math PDT next school year as well. We also had a lot of conversation through that PDT on what just math good instructional practices are, and talking about the standards of mathematical practice. And then the last column in this curriculum goal 1, because there is a second one coming, is work on assessment. And so during the 22-23 school year, we reviewed and updated our assessments. This year, we analyzed our assessment data by student groups, so really looking at all of our different student groups, and we were looking not only at proficiency, but looking at growth within those groups as well. And then we reviewed our assessments based on equity data. Next year, we're going to continue and utilize, we're going to continue a conversation about assessment and really have conversation about formative assessment and how do we utilize formative assessment to make instructional decisions. So when we're talking about formative data, it's really what's happening in the classroom in the moment, not waiting to the end of the unit in order for us to be able to make some decisions about how to help best support our students, both for reteaching and extension and enrichment opportunities. And then, as you know, we implemented, long before I got here, so I'm not going to try and guess how many years, a standards-based report card at the K-4 level. That was implemented with the purpose of with utilizing headings to start, and then after about 2 years, adding the actual standards in the report cards. Well, it's been more than 2 years because I'm finishing my second year. And we are going to be adding those standards to the report card for next school year. So that is, we're going to support that, those grading and instructional reporting practices at the K-4 level. Okay, that's all of Curriculum Goal 1. Now let's talk about Curriculum Goal 2. This goal was written to investigate options for new or revised course offerings with emphasis on world language, dual language, and encore opportunities. And so this work, there's a lot of work that's happened here. That first column talks about exploring possible revisions to the structure of the day for grades 5-8. The reason that this was put on here was in order to find consistency and develop consistency in our schedule at the 5-8 level. And so during the 22-23 school year, we developed a planning and design team in order to review and study different schedules and what different types of schedules would help support the learning of our students. That committee, or that PD team, met for the entire school year and left with some recommendations for us. We then investigated, I've already shared that, investigating ways in order for continued consistency between buildings. Then this school year, we also consulted with the business office for consideration to determine funding feasibility for all of the different recommendations that were provided there. There were some recommendations that we did put on hold and did not move forward with in order to ensure that we were being fiscally responsible. And then for next school year, we're going to be implementing the new 5-8 schedule, so we're excited about that. And we've been providing professional development this summer already for some staff that are interested in participating in that, and will continue throughout the summer. The second topic under this exploration and investigation was to explore considerations for world language. And so during the 22-23 school year, this was all part of the same planning and design team. So the planning and design team talked about all of these topics. It wasn't different groups. We talked about these all together. And so we consulted with District 127 for potential programming. We talked about different languages that would be appropriate at the middle school level, and what would we want to discuss, and then determined feasibility and next steps with that. Dr. Diaz was very much a part of all of those conversations. And so ultimately, it was determined that this was not going to be feasible, and it was part of the polling, was something that the community said not right now, that we're going to put this on hold. So this was one of those recommendations that we did put on hold for possible future consideration. This next piece is exploring possibilities for dual language, and this is a planning and design team that we actually started this year in order to look at not just dual language, but our multilingual programming in general. We are researching different program design and determining what is possible. We are actually going to continue that next school year, as there was a lot to talk about, and there's a lot to look into as we're talking about our supports for our students who are multilingual, as well as our dual programming. And so Dr. Diaz is helping us to lead that. So we will continue that, and our ultimate goal is to determine next steps, hopefully for the 25-26 school year in that area. And then the last piece is exploring future encore opportunities, and that was part of that initial planning and design team that started in 22-23. And so we had conversations about what are different encore offerings. We looked at different ways to what do other middle schools offer, what would staffing considerations be, and really did some cost analysis with some of that. Determined our feasibility and next steps. And so we determined for moving forward within that new 5-8 schedule, which is our work for next year, is that we will be at the 5-8 level, we will have general music, art, and STEM will be our encore opportunities. So that is everything under curriculum goal 1 and 2.
So thank you. Before we move on to the next goal area, which is technology, I just wanted to make a comment to you, board. Amy talked for a while. She had a lot to say, and that's exactly what you want, right? You're going to hear, as we talk about the rest of the goals, they'll be briefer, because the work of a school district is about teaching and learning. And we as a school district and you as a board have spent so much time in the past year talking about funding, talking about our buildings and the needs of our buildings. Why? Well, it's so we can do this, right? And so I wanted to mention that to you because it's just so important that we don't lose sight of our purpose. And so thank you, Amy, for talking about our purpose. All right. I don't mean to dismiss what you're going to talk about at all, but it's all leading, right? It's all leading to that important curriculum, teaching and learning work, right?
Yep, without a solid backbone and infrastructure, we couldn't access our online resources.
Exactly.
So,
go for it.
So our technology goal is really to develop, review, and communicate a comprehensive master technology plan, which focuses on equitable and engaging technology-rich learning environments to serve our students, staff, and communities aligned with district goals. So under that first group, it was to develop that master technology plan, and this year we really evaluated the plan that was in place that I adopted, and to assess ongoing needs. In the next school year, we are going to be creating a professional PDT, professional design team to evaluate and implement the implementation of the master technology plan and to update those goals. In the realm of classroom technology, this year we spent time providing appropriate ongoing professional development for all staff, and we will continue to do that, really focused on instructional practices and how technology can support those instructional practices. As far as devices go, this year, as you know, we've talked a lot about updating our refresh cycle so that we are moving from a 3-year to a 4-year refresh cycle to really make the most use out of the devices that we are purchasing. So we're in the process right now of organizing and getting all the devices ready for the students that'll have them next year, which is exciting and messy work. And for next school year, we will be refreshing staff devices. The bulk of my time this year and my team's time this year was really focused on infrastructure, making sure that backbone that everything else is reliant on is where we needed it to be. So as you know, we upgraded the wireless infrastructure, we updated a whole bunch of switches, our server environment. I'm sure I'm forgetting things, but we did a lot. And so we will be taking all of the work that we've done and really putting it on a maintenance plan so that we can continue to make sure that that backbone is what we need it to be. I'm going to turn it over to Chris Worldman.
Thank you. I'm going to talk about the next two goals, facilities and finance. So the facilities goal is to review, expand, and clarify the comprehensive master facilities plan on an annual basis to continue to create equitable quality learning environments, both inside and outside of the buildings, to serve our students, staff, and communities with a focus on aligning decision-making to district goals. So we really do that as part of this goal. We are continuing to update the master facilities plan. So as you can see from the green, which is this year, we've continued that priority work, which is completing years 2 and moving into year 3 of the 3-year priority capital plan. And looking forward into next year as we update the long-range facility plan with priorities, cost escalation, that really is that work that we talked about when we were presenting the Maintaining Excellence, which is taking that work that we talked about during the referendum and pushing it forward, and that will be tied to the next goal in the finance. There's a huge overlap between the facilities and finance. The next group we have is creating equitable facilities. We examined options for renewable energy, solar projects at Avon, Meadowview, and Woodview. That has not been presented to you yet, although I do have the information, and we will use that opportunity to actually give you another update on being able to update the classroom spaces with a ComEd rebate program, which Scott Gonke will be able to assist with because he's actually did that at a previous district. And as we move forward into the new year, continuing the evaluation of renewable energy. So really it's just continue on a continual basis looking at what options do we have available to us in terms of our funding with the finance goal and being able to continually look back at our facility needs to make any expansion or improvements that we can. And then finally, creative use of land and buildings. We had a very nice presentation a few weeks ago from the families who really helped build the outdoor learning space at Avon. I was lucky enough this week to be with Scott Gonke, and we actually did a walk view at another building where another PTO group is actually recommitting to a sensory garden. So lots and lots of things are happening at the PTO level, and we want to support them as best as they can. Moving into the finance goal, I'm going to read it to you. You're very familiar with it. I use it at the beginning of every presentation I do. Review, expand, and clarify financial practices to increase transparency and communication with a focus on aligning financial decision-making to district goals. So we just had a finance committee. This is the first group. We just had our first one in several months, and we had it was an amazing discussion. I love finance committee, as you know, where we had tax attorneys coming to update the Board of Education on current practices with our IGA with District 127, and to discuss some options we have for economic development with the village. So we're going to continue to use the Finance Committee to discuss the funding options as we move forward with that Maintaining Excellence. We will be hopefully have another one soon, and we'll be able to bring back Liz Hennessy to talk about some of those funding options. The next group we have is increasing financial transparency and communication. In previous years, I've mentioned the budget book and all the other information we do, but we're really proud that we actually got a financial dashboard up and running last year, which has all the information of the district on a quarterly basis so anyone can see it, as well as key financial KPIs for the solar, which was up and running. And then finally, the final group is improving financial decision making. I mentioned it in the previous goal. It's making sure that we have that funding beyond year 3 and into year 4 of that long range financial plan. And I'm going to hand it back to Dr. Glickman because she's going to talk about the communication goal.
Yep, indeed I am. All right, the communication goal reads as follows: review, expand, and clarify communication methods to provide consistency and transparency with stakeholders and establish a CCSD 46 brand that supports the mission, vision, and values of the district. So that goal is divided into 2 sections. One is all about a unified message and accessible communication, and the second is about how we connect with our community. So 2 years ago, we were all about our new website, and are very proud of that new website. In the 23-24 school year, we created a fiscal and facility needs section. That's the dashboard that Mr. Wildman was just talking about with pride. And in the upcoming year, we're going to be creating equity and inclusion, an equity and inclusion video series. Then that'll be included in the website. So that is something we're extremely excited about. We're going to start incorporating video. We had a new logo that was created 2 years ago, and this year that logo, kind of the update regarding that logo, is the equity posters that are in all of our buildings, and it's hanging right there. We don't have any specific plans for the 24-25 school year in relation to our new logo, except to keep using it, and every once in a while we see some piece of paper that has an old logo on it, and we fix it. So we continue to do that. Communication in multiple languages was actually an effort in the 22-23 school year, and we have not had goal steps for the last year or this upcoming year, except to continue that work. And consistent usage of platforms. So in this past school year, we updated our social media platforms based on community feedback. So we continue to listen to what the community is telling us about what platforms they're using and continue to update as we learn more from the community. 2 action steps in the upcoming year. One has to do with our student services team. That student services team's communication will be even more regularly provided to staff through the teaching and learning update. And we're going to be considering an integrated communication platform that's a lot of fancy language, but actually as soon as, in probably about 15 minutes, we're going to be talking about that robustly in an agenda item. So that's all about the unified, accessible communication. Regarding our connections with the community, this past school year, our CEC, Community Engagement Committee, has been very busy. The members created recommendations with our PTOs, leaders, regarding engaging new parents and guardians in school activities, so there was a lot of conversation in that area. The CEC and Board of Education members attended village and other community entity meetings. They created, we've created content highlighting district successes, and we share those with community entities. This year brought a brand new district-wide electronic newsletter. I have left the CEC realm right now, and I'm just talking about the work of our district in general. We have our new newsletter. We're very proud of it, and it continues through the summer. And we've worked to standardize the building level communication, including the use of newsletters. What's upcoming? Well, we're bringing back the board briefs. We've had board members ask about that, and we feel like we are now positioned to include a board briefs section in our newsletters. So Mrs. Walker and Ms. Armstrong are going to be working very closely together to do that following board meetings. And then we'll be continuing our efforts to standardize our building level communication. So that's what we have in the realm of communication in the upcoming school year. And that brings us to a close with our strategic plan update. And board, we'd love to know if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you for that update. Led off by saying that you took off the items that were performed in 21-22, and that really, I can't believe it's been that long since we did the work to create these goals, and it almost seems to indicate that we should start thinking about when the next cycle begins again.
So that's an agenda item tonight to discuss that.
I knew that.
Perfect. I know, you just were feeding it. We're just feeding it to each other. I know you knew that.
Totally knew that.
I know
I
you
did
knew
have a
that.
couple questions about the presentation
Perfect.
tonight. As it related to
Good idea.
curriculum number 1 goal, in the pillar of cultural responsiveness, can you give me a sense of what it means? What's an example of updating school environments? What does that mean?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things that we've been talking about, and we've been looking at are our environments, one, welcoming for all of our students? Do we have opportunities for students in our materials and things like that to look at, have the windows and mirrors piece? We're really looking at, are they accessible for all of our students? So having opportunities for us to be able to ensure that our learning environments are environments that all of our students are safe and comfortable, and they're good learning environments for our students.
Asked a different way, what would be an example of something that would make a student uncomfortable from a certain culture?
Yeah, so I think that's where that windows, and it's not uncomfortable, I think that's where the windows and mirrors comes in, and we've been having a lot of conversation about kids being able to see themselves in the work that we're doing, and the materials that we're using within the classroom.
And secondly, in curriculum number 2, right, possible revisions to the structure of the day, investigate ways for continued consistency between buildings, right? That seems like a continuation of what we once known as one district, one direction.
Yes.
When you guys went through that work and saw that there were inconsistencies perhaps between buildings, and when you tried to level those back to being consistent, and you ran into the problem where you couldn't level it to the more optimal solution, and I don't have anything particular in mind per se, but how did you address that? And if the lower common denominator of optimal was chosen, is that really a good outcome? It might be the same, but is it?
Yeah, and I'm trying to
better?
think, I don't think we ever had to do that where it was a lower optimal choice. As we looked at everything, one, we started with how many minutes do we have our students for in the school day, right? And we have our students for 390 minutes. That includes their lunch. And so we had to look at, from the time they get to us to the time that they leave, how do we optimize and really look at the best, how much that we can utilize that time in the best way to support their learning environment, but also looked at things like how are we providing opportunities for students to engage in creating a sense of belonging, and looking at, that's where advisory is coming in, right? So in looking at how are we going to work on some of those social emotional learning pieces that are so important as well for students. Some of the things that were really inconsistent were, I can give you some examples around the length of time of class. We had one building where class periods, core classes were 48 to 53 minutes, and we had another building where it was 80 for the same course. And so when we're looking at that, we're not providing one district, one direction, right? We really needed to look at what is a solution that makes sense, that is still meeting our needs, still meeting the needs of the resources that we've adopted, and still opportunities for students to receive all of their instruction that they need to within a school day. And so really spent a lot of time with, the committee was great. We did a lot of talking and researching together and doing some reading together, looking at different schedules that other districts utilize from other middle schools, so other students that are same age, similar size districts to us, but also wanted to be fiscally responsible when we were looking at that. So how could we do some things within that time where we're not adding a ton of staff, right? Where we're gonna be adding a lot of cost to what we were doing. So a lot of conversation went into that in order to help to balance it out and make it consistent. I really don't feel like we kind of gave in on anything.
Can I just add too that it wasn't really about bringing it up or down. It was really about making sure that there was equitable access to learning opportunities across the district. That students in the same common grade, no matter what school they attend, have similar learning experiences, have the same level of rigor and things like that. So it was really about creating equity in learning through all those things that you said you did.
We would call that a guaranteed and viable curriculum in my world.
I think I would piggyback off of Mr. LaCroix's question. I was excited to hear about the addition of videos to the platform on the website. I'm curious, are they going to be, are they going to be in-district created videos? Or are you going to have a combination of existing ways to tell the story of the district, and how is that going to kind of feed into that piece? It sounds exciting.
Sure. They'll be in district. That's our current plan. And Mrs. Armstrong's going to be working her magic with interviews, likely with students and staff and families. This upcoming year, our intent is to focus on topics of equity. And kind of the things that Amy was just talking about, right? Do you see yourselves in your classrooms? Those kinds of questions. What does it mean to be here in School District 46? But in future years, we'll likely focus on in other areas. Yeah.
I have, I don't know if it's a request or a question. When you were sharing about the classroom technology, Amanda, it started me thinking about the initial rollout of Chromebooks way back when we first got EBF, right? That was one of our exciting things that we did just for third grade and up at the time because it was pre-pandemic. But one of the things that I really appreciated about how we did that rollout was that we had a committee, one of these acronyms, to create one of these great teams to create a instructional technology philosophy for the district. And I really liked that. I thought it was a great way to keep us honest about how we're using technology. And so I'd be interested in either exploring how that stood up or renewing it, or, you know, as we go maybe into the next strategic planning process. I just thought it was a really, really nice document that helped people feel better that kids weren't going to be spending time on their screens all day. And I think it would be a nice thing to just continue over time.
And I think most of that work was housed within the master technology plan, and that's why we're pulling together a PDT of different CCSD 46 the stakeholders to really look at how we did with that and to make a plan forward so that we can all be on the same page and be doing the best things for students. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have a few items on our new business section. The first one is the Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee. Dr. Glickman, you want to?
Yeah. Well, this seems to be a stay in your seat kind of a night, so I think I'm going to. Also, then I can read my presentation a little bit better tonight. Guess it's time to go to the eye doctor. Okay, so board, every school year, I'm charged with the responsibility of bringing together a committee of parent, guardians, teachers, and administrators as well for this committee. You are used to seeing the very next slide being the mission. But it's coming up later. There's a reason. Because first I want to make sure everyone understands what this committee really is so that you'll understand where it fits into our mission. So Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee shows up two places in our policy, in school board policy. The first is in the policy 2:150, which is committees. And one of those committees is the Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee. And I'm not going to read this to you, but it talks about how it is basically a committee for developing student behavior policy and procedure and providing recommendations to the Board of Education, that there should be parents and guardians and teachers and possibly other people as well who will have expertise. In this case, it also included administrators. And there's a wide number of things that the committee might be reviewing. This year, we were very specifically reviewing topics of student discipline, mostly related to technology, and you'll hear more about that soon. And the other policy is in policy 7190, which is the student behavior policy, that says that the superintendent, with input from the Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee, shall prepare disciplinary rules implementing the district's disciplinary policies. These disciplinary rules should be presented annually to the board for its review and approval, and that's what we're doing tonight. Kind of. When I say kind of, there is this policy 7190, has some language in it that we are recommending a revision to, And so I'll be presenting that to you, and if you are in favor of it, then we'll bring it back to the next board meeting for an actual approval of change in policy language. The rest of this is just us sharing what it is that the committee recommended and how we're planning to implement it. And that brings us to the mission, because now that you know what that's about, you can see that this is very much about empowering learners, because we believe that a student who understands what is expected is an empowered learner. You're also going to hear me talk a lot about the distractions that we are seeing happen for our students and how we want to rectify that situation to better empower our learners. All right, so we had 2 meetings this school year. Typically we just do one, but last year in May of 2023, when this committee met, right at the end, there was kind of a, hey, what about cell phones? We have to talk about that. And frankly, at that time, we weren't ready, nor was there, frankly, enough time to talk about that. And so this year, we knew all year long that cell phones are such a big topic. And board, you've been hearing about this throughout our nation, right? You've been hearing about, well, one very large school district in California has created a brand new policy related to their cell phones. You've heard about District 127 with a new plan for parking your cell phone when you get into the classroom. Spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about that here as well. And so we knew we really needed to spend a lot of time on that topic. So we had 2 meetings. We had committee members from across the district. Lots of people invited. Of course, it's May. People are very busy. Ultimately, in attendance, we had 6 parents, 10 teachers and deans, 4 building administrators, and 3 district administrators. And we dealt with 4 topics: student cell phones, student smartwatches, student wireless headphones, so all of that around technology, and also a 4th different topic, which was student hate speech. I'm going to start with talking about student cell phones and the concerns that have been noted throughout the school district at grades 5 through 8. Now, I'm going to pause there and mention that we know that there are students at grades 4 and below that do have cell phones. But what we heard from our teachers and our administrators, and frankly the parents that were there as well, is that by and large, our 4th graders and younger, if they have a cell phone, are following the expectations that we've set forth, which is that those cell phones need to be away and out of sight and not a distraction and turned off and not a bother. The kids are doing that. So our focus right now is at grades 5 through 8. That is not to say that it's impossible that we could find difficulties at younger grades as well. And if that happens, well, then we will have our new changes in procedure to fall back on, and we may make those changes at younger as well. But right now, we're just focused on 5-8. So I'm going to walk you through the kinds of things that we have been seeing in our schools. We'll start with notifications. So you know what a notification is, right? Somebody sends you a text. Maybe there's a notification that something has come through a social media platform that you're following or that you've been mentioned in it. They are constant with our students. In fact, here is a piece of data that came from one of our administrators or deans, I cannot remember. They had a student's cell phone in the office. Why was it in the office? Well, because the child had had the cell phone out during the school day, and so it was confiscated, which is our practice, right, when it's a distraction. That child's cell phone had 98 notifications during the school day. 98 times that it, I don't know, it buzzed, it was dinging, I didn't ask that question, but 98 times. If that student had had that cell phone available in his or her pocket or under the desk, which is often the case, 98 times his or her learning would have been disrupted by a notification. Students are using them in bathrooms and locker rooms, both using them and taking pictures, which is completely outside of school policy. They're playing games in classrooms. So the teacher might be leading what is meant to be an engaging lesson, but the child may be with the cell phone underneath the desk playing a video game. Constant multitasking. So we've talked about this before. We certainly talked about it at our committee meeting, that there's all kinds of research now that we might believe that we can multitask, but brain research says, no, we can't. That some people are better at managing themselves, but frankly, when you are doing one thing and you have to take your attention to somewhere else, your brain has to make a switch, no matter how quickly it happens. And so the world our students are living in is this multitasking, faux multitasking world, I'll say. That's what they're used to, and we're seeing that in classrooms as well, as they're being disrupted by notifications and such. They're posting on social media during the school day and using social media as communication with others in classes, and we're going to tell you something about that in a little bit. There's cyberbullying going on. I know you know about that. Sometimes it starts at school, sometimes it starts at home and carries over to school, but it is definitely a problem in our schools. All right, let's talk about what happens when a child is not feeling well. So what are they supposed to do? Well, they're supposed to alert their teacher that they're not feeling well and that they need to go to the nurse. And then the nurse or the health assistant is supposed to assess the situation and, as needed, contact home. There's an entire structure. There is a way that we keep track of all of that. That's what's supposed to happen. But what has been happening very frequently lately is that a child will go to the bathroom, call their parent or text their parent, and a parent will show up in the office and say, I'm here to pick up my child who's not feeling well. And the office staff doesn't know what's going on and has had no opportunity to assess what is happening with that child, to support that child and help them through their day, or to call the parents as needed. Students are using their phones on the bus, recording other students, taking pictures and making prank calls. Parents are texting their students throughout the day. So let's go to that first one, those notifications, those 98 notifications. I don't know the truth of the matter, but it's reasonable to guess that some of those notifications came from one child texting another, some came from social media, and some of them may have been texts that they were getting from their family members. They're taking images of their teachers, taking pictures of their teachers and other staff members and other students throughout the school day without permission, which is a significant violation of privacy. They're FaceTiming students in other classes. Middle of the day, just calling a friend. And this is my personal favorite, I say with a little bit of sarcasm. We've heard of that there are grade level and or wing group chats. So an entire wing of of a middle school would have a chat going on during instruction. And that's the short list, because I'm sure that we could have much more conversation with parents and teachers and administrators and you about other issues that they're seeing with cell phones. So the committee came up with a unanimous decision, and I want to pause to comment that for each one of the topics I'm going to talk about, the recommendations from the committee were completely unanimous, which is remarkable, which really never happens, but people were absolutely seeing that this is a disruption to the school day and we need to come up with a solution. And the recommendation, I'm going to pause, sorry, out of order. What is already in place? Hang on. Well, we already have a student cell phone ban in Board Policy 7190. So I'm going to read to you what it currently says. What you see up here is actually our recommended revisions, and I'm going to talk about one of the revisions now, and then I'll talk about the second revision later. But what it currently says is that using or possessing a cellular telephone, electronic signaling device, a two-way radio, video recording device, and or other telecommunication device, unless authorized and approved by the school or the building principal, that's something that's prohibited. Now, you can see wireless headphones is added. I'm going to talk about that later. And you can see that we're actually recommending taking out the words possessing, because what is the point of having a policy that you cannot enforce? And we cannot enforce whether or not children are going to bring cell phones to school. So we frankly believe it is best to take those words out of the policy, but instead to change how we're handling that and update our procedure. So here's the committee consensus recommendation. For grade students in grades 5 through 8 who bring cell phones to school, they will be required to check them into storage units in their classrooms at the start of each class. So those we're actually in the process of looking at what is the best thing to purchase. GMS did do a little of this last spring at one team. So they kind of experimented with different methods for students parking their cell phones. So it'll probably either be like a hanging bag, so picture like a shoe bag, right, that you might have, or like these little wooden locker things. They're not locked up. It's just that the child will come into each class and park their cell phone. The storage units will be provided by the school district. And as I mentioned earlier, we're not planning to make any changes right now for under 5th grade just because we don't think it's necessary, but we certainly can update this as needed in the future. So that's the committee consensus recommendation. I want to share that what we also know is that just buying the things isn't enough. We have to have a lot of conversation with our students, of course, with our families, and with our teachers as well, so that we are kind of united as one school district, that we need to provide and empower our learners with a much more distraction-free environment. That brings me to the recommended changes in our published materials. Well, we have that language update regarding the use of cell phones in Policy 7190, and then additional information in the student handbook. So that information would look very much like this, right? We'll be sharing through our handbook and then through many communications with our families that this is the plan for the upcoming school year. All right, I'm moving into student smartwatches. So many of us have smartwatches. I have an Apple Watch. My Apple Watch is connected to my cell phone. But we also, and some students do have smartwatches that are connected to cell phones. But you probably know that many students now have devices that are smartwatches that are not connected to cell phones. These are devices that parents purchase for their children for very good reasons, that they want to be able to connect with their children and make sure that they're safe after the school day's over. So these are devices that parents can kind of track where their kids are without having to have a cell phone. However, there are concerns with them, and those concerns exist whether they are connected to a phone or whether they're not. What are those concerns? Well, students are receiving messages from their parents and guardians throughout the school day on their watch. Parents and guardians are calling their children through their watches to communicate. We're seeing that mostly at the younger grades, right, where the children don't have a cell phone, so now the parents are calling them on their watch. And in fact, they are calling their children, this isn't happening a lot, but we need to deal with it now. Parents are calling their children through their watches and then listening into the classroom, because there's a way to be able to do that, causing a privacy violation. And forgive me, I'm going to read because we have some legal language that I want to share with you about why that's problematic. So any device with a listen-in feature is a significant privacy issue. And we have been advised by counsel to prohibit the use in school and to ensure that the feature is disabled. As a district, we are responsible to protect the privacy and confidentiality of the students in accordance with the Family Education Rights to Protection Act, FERPA, and the Illinois School Students Records Act. Additionally, Illinois has a strict eavesdropping law that prohibits someone from recording any private conversation in which at least one person in the conversation has a reasonable expectation of privacy without the consent of all parties being recorded. An unauthorized recording by a student presents a very real possibility that private information protected by federal law will be disseminated in violation of the law and subject to criminal charges. So we need to manage this situation. the recommendation from the committee was not to do anything through policy, because at this time, because the only thing to do through policy would be to prohibit students wearing those watches. And we didn't want to put our parents in that situation, because we understand that there are parents who want their children to have access to these watches so that they have safety after school. So our intent for the upcoming school year, and as recommended by the committee, is to manage this through really frequent communication with parents and guardians about this topic, explaining that students should not receive or respond to texts from family members during the school day. Family members should not call really cannot call their students during the school day, cannot listen into the classrooms. We would be in the position of needing to confiscate the watches if that's happening. And all of that information would also be included in student handbook, and that would include some of this legal language that I just shared with you. Moving on to student wireless headphones. So what are we noting? Well, students are wearing those little earbuds during the school day, and therefore allowing themselves to engage in content that distracts them from what is occurring in the classroom. And often, staff members are unable to visually detect that they're wearing them. So I'm going to use my friend Dr. Lorenzo as an example for a moment. She's got long hair, which at the moment she is pulling forward. Heather could be wearing wireless headphones right now and listening to a podcast or a movie or music and entirely ignoring the fact that I am trying to engage with her. And that has been happening. Not that she would ever do that. So this has been a really significant problem at the upper grade level specifically. However, we do need to allow students to have headphones at school. In fact, many of our online resources require that children be able to plug in and listen to something as a part of a lesson. So what are we doing? Well, the consensus recommendation is that only wired headphones can be used at school, because you can see them, right? We can see whether a child has them in their ears. The changes to written materials include updated school supply lists, and that has already been done, and those have already been sent home. So the school supply lists say that only wired headphones are allowed. Then that goes back to that language. So if you look down at the recommended language, revision for policy 7190, we want to add that as a prohibited material. So we're not allowing wireless headphones at school. We would be including it also with additional information in our student handbook. So that's the recommendation around headphones. Now I'm going to move to the fourth topic, which is not about technology. It's about hate speech. So, board, you have heard a little bit about this directly from our students, because a few board meetings ago, we had students from GMS come and talk with you about work that they were doing at their school. And some of that work surrounded how to deal with hate speech. And I want to pause and comment that the rise in the use of hate speech that we have been seeing in our students mimics what we are seeing across the country. So I do not want to make anyone feel that this issue is specific to our children, specific to CCSD 46 at all. We are seeing this everywhere, but what we can deal with is our own students. And I also want to note that in many cases, we know that students don't even know what they are saying or why the language is harmful. But there have definitely been cases this year where the use of derogatory and inflammatory language is intentional. We know that. We've seen that too. So both kinds of things occur. So what's the recommendation? Well, as you heard at that prior board meeting, in this school year, the Grace Lake Middle School staff worked with the Anti-Defamation League to provide students with activities and discussions marking GMS as no place for hate. And this work will be expanded to our other schools in the 24-25 school year in age-appropriate ways. So the kinds of things that happen this year at GMS will happen next year at Park, but there are also younger, age-appropriate activities that will happen at our other schools, because we believe that we have to deal with this from the ground up. This is an education piece that we need to provide for our students. We'll also be including a definition of hate speech in the student handbook. So that was the last piece we dealt with. This last slide I'm going to share with you. Hang on a second, I want to check something. Am I there? Yes. I want to share with you, I'm going to wrap this up with a new kind of slide that, board, you should expect to see in upcoming board presentations. And I'm going to roll you way back to the beginning of our board meeting when Mrs. Gluck was talking about what we did at our staff retreat a week and a half ago. One of the conversations that we had at that staff retreat was about how we share our values amongst staff members and with our community. And in that conversation, we looked at each other and we said, you know, we talk about our mission a lot, and we talk about it at the beginning of every board or every presentation. And we talk about our vision quite a lot. And we post our values. But maybe we haven't been talking about our values enough. So we will be experimenting this year with, as appropriate, but we think it will very often be appropriate, including our value statements in our presentations at both board meetings and at presentations that we do throughout the district. So this very last slide is the values that come right off that poster over there that we believe are responsive to this topic. We embrace a culture that honors integrity and respect for all. So updating our discipline policies and talking about how we deal with discipline, and very specifically dealing with hate speech, is very much responsive to embracing a culture that honors integrity and respect for all. And we maximize student engagement and develop critical thinking skills that lead to lifelong learning and global thinking. So that is directly connected to our intent to minimize the amount of electronic distractions that our students are having during the school day. Those are values that were created when our current strategic plan was created, and you can see we have a number of them. Those are the ones we believe are responsive to what we are currently talking about. And that brings us to the end of this presentation. What questions or comments do you have, board?
I'm curious about alignment with 127, and I'm assuming this just prepares students for the expectations at 127.
Yeah, very much so. So 127 is doing the exact same thing in their classrooms. There is a difference that I will make public, is that at 127, the students are able to use their cell phones during lunch. And we had some robust conversation about that, and came to consensus ultimately that the risk of that there was a significant risk at our young grade levels of students not engaging with each other. And so we want to enhance the amount of time that students are actually looking at each other and having a conversation, face to face, eyes to eyes, right? And so it is our intent to continue not having cell phone use during the lunch periods and other free time, except to say that there may be times when a school may do something for something special, right, or some special kind of incentive. But otherwise, we are completely aligned with 127. And by the way, we understand why 127 would be doing that during lunch. It's just different, right? They're older kids. Other questions? Yes.
I was going to ask that very question about lunch and passing periods as well. Clearly, parents have gotten used to the idea of reaching their kids at all times during the day. And, I mean, clearly that's not an expectation that I had, or my father had when I was a child, that he could reach me at any time during the day. You said all of these recommendations were unanimously adopted by all the members, and I'm curious, did any of the parents have an objection initially that got overcome? And I can anticipate that there will be some objection to this, and how do you plan on handling such objections?
Yeah, certainly. So the first question is no. There was nobody in the room that thought that was hesitant. And I think a piece of that is when that committee built that list of concerns that we're seeing. And I think when you see how many problems we're having, it's really rather startling. And it's different from, but I want to connect with my kid, right? I want to connect with my kid. I'm not thinking about the fact that that's happening all over the classroom all day long. So it is certainly our hope that as we build that informational piece for our families, they will be supportive. That stated, if a family were, what we can't see, we can't see. And we certainly hope that a family is going to instruct their child to put their cell phone in the cubby. If that doesn't happen, we will assume that the child does not have the cell phone. If the child does have the cell phone and it's dinging and we're seeing it, well, then that's a violation of the requirements that we've set up. So that's the answer to the question, because this will be an expectation in our schools.
There are going to be a lot of parents who feel a significant loss of control about this. It's going to be a contentious issue. I am 100% supportive of these changes. As a family member of a recent 8th grade student, as the spouse of an 8th grade teacher, and as a parent myself, seeing the effects that having these phones in schools has had on attention spans, lack of focus, and just difficulty in completing a school day with the rigor that's needed. So I'm very supportive of these changes.
Thank you. I do want to point one other thing out, actually two things. One is, notably, we are not purchasing those lock-up phone devices that some school districts have done. So you may know, board, that it is possible to purchase these cases, basically, that lock up, and then children are literally not able to, and in some cases we've seen places, kids will have to turn their cell phone in, like at a big table as they walk in the door, and they don't get them back until the end of the school day. That's not what we're doing. They will be in the classroom with the child. And so we are hoping that that will make our families feel more comfortable, because there is that worry. Families have that worry of, oh my gosh, what if there's an emergency and my child won't be able to get a hold of me? The cell phones will be in the classrooms with them. They just won't be underneath the table with the child while the child is supposed to be learning. And the other piece I wanted to share is we have newsletters coming out throughout the summer, and we will start communicating with families about these changes through those newsletters this summer, so people can start knowing about it, thinking about it, and getting their questions answered.
I think it would be great to have those 6 parents maybe be quoted or do some ambassadorship as well if they're willing, because I think that parent-to-parent conversation is really important.
Yeah.
You know, that idea of I get it and that's your intent, but the impact is bigger than you're probably thinking about.
Because it's for good. Look, I have 2 adult daughters. We're in communication all day long, except I'm working for you, so that's not true at all. But I mean, right, we're all used to that. We are used to that. And I think people just don't think about that impact to student learning. Yeah.
We've gotten used to be able to talk to our students about things that are really could be handled at different times, like,
right.
Did you remember to take out your white baseball pants for your game tonight, or where can I find your basketball shoes?
Yeah.
That's nothing that needs to be addressed in the middle of math class.
Exactly. Yeah. Other questions or comments?
Yeah, I'm in support of all the electronic stuff. I have a question regarding the hate speech part, right?
Yes.
As that's probably a much larger issue you know, as you said earlier, you know, it's become a cultural norm in the way our country has been turning lately. And for us as an organization, of trying to make everybody feel welcome, we need to really cut that or nip it in the bud, whatever you want to call it, you know, cut it out. What are the current punishments for that type of language that might be going on, regardless if it's via their phones, face-to-face, or whatever? You know, I know we see a lot of in-school suspensions and stuff like that, but, you know, what are the steps for you know, first-time offender or second-time offender or whatever?
Yeah, certainly. So in our school district, we've been really intentional about managing things in a case-by-case situation. Because, and that's not just about hate speech, that's about everything that we do with our students, because situations are different. So there are all kinds of considerations. We have to do the best we can to determine whether or not the student understood what he or she was saying, right? What they were saying, that's important. We have to consider what is how high does this particular language rise, right? Or what they did. Has it been a repeat offender? So consequences can be anywhere from, you know, a pretty young child, us understanding that they didn't know what they were saying and it just being a conversation, and a call to a family to say, we want to let you know that this is what happened today. We understand your child didn't understand what they meant, and we are, you know, we're sharing this with you, and please have a conversation at home, to, you know, it could be a detention, it could be an in-school suspension with a project to do, possibly they're doing some kind of a, you know, reconciling the situation with another child. It can be an out-of-school suspension, so it really is dependent on a wide variety of things.
I guess my worry would be that the punishment isn't harsh enough to learn a lesson on some of those things, right? Sometimes you have to have harsh punishment in order to understand that what you said to somebody else was highly inappropriate. I just want to, I guess, I'm in support of, like, really clamping down on that and really enforcing the punishment aspect of that, because it has no place in school. It shouldn't have any place anywhere, but it has no place in school.
It has no place in school, absolutely. What we have at our disposal are the kinds of things I described, along with the length of suspensions. And so have there been times that we've had lengthy suspensions because of these types of incidents? The answer to that is yes, we have.
I support all of it, and I would also add that I think this, I think that topic in particular would make a great parent university topic. Just how to talk to your kids about hate speech, what to do when you hear it outside of school, how can you support the school in eliminating it as well, because kids they don't hear it in school, they bring it into school many times. Right. So I think just how to have that conversation at different ages of children, I think would be awesome. I'd be interested in learning more about that.
Thank you.
Sounds like we have consensus on that, both of those items to come to the next board meeting.
Yeah, so actually, I think that brings us to policy 7190 update. So that you just have a brief memo about that board, and that's asking if you want this to be, you know, if you want the updated policy to come to the next board meeting. So sounds like the answer to that is yes.
Yep.
Okay, sounds good. Really fast agenda item, perfect.
Parent Square is the next item on the new business.
Yes, so as Dr. Glickman shared during our strategic goal update, there has been a considerable effort to have consistent communication and transparency. This year that looked like the district newsletters, but also communications coming from building administrators too, to families and community members. And in sending these communications, we chose to use the tool that was available to us, which is our student information system, Infinite Campus, and their additional tool called Messenger 2.0. And we've been using it this whole year, and as we've been using it, we've recognized some challenges that it presents, which are outlined in the memo, but include things such as all emails that come from Messenger 2.0 come from CCSD at CCSD or at d46.org. So it doesn't matter if it's a teacher communicating with an individual parent or the district newsletter going out to everybody. So it's hard to have that two-way communication, which we value. There have been some challenges with translations in text messages, and among other things. Most notably, I would say, is the data, to know that what we're doing is actually having an impact. And so because of these challenges, Leslie Armstrong, Dr. Glickman, and I had worked to learn about other options that were available, reaching out to local school districts to see what they were using. And there was a clear choice among other districts, and that was Parent Square. So we engaged with Parent Square to learn really more about them and if it would meet the needs that we were looking to address. We had district administrators, building administrators sit through a demo to really see what Parent Square could offer. And then we also had some teachers who had used the communication tools in Infinite Campus to evaluate it as well, and got nothing but positive feedback, I would say. So this addresses a couple of the communication goals, including communicating with all families. So our multilingual, this has some built-in translation features, which is going to be very beneficial in making it easier to communicate with a wider variety of languages that are in our community. I'm not sure if I'm missing anything, but lots of great features that we hope to really take advantage of and better engage our community.
So, if the board is feeling positive about us moving forward with that, at the next board meeting, Amanda will bring you a contract, is that correct? What do you leave her bringing?
Yep, so the contract is actually attached.
Oh,
in
it
the
is
packet
attached.
today,
I'm
so you
sorry.
can see,
see
the
it.
cost that would be associated with it. The cost would be offset by eliminating the current Messenger 2.0 tool that we are paying Infinite Campus for. And so you can see all of that.
And we'll bring you, but we'll bring it as an action item
Yes.
at the next board meeting. Okay, great. Yeah.
And maybe I'm not understanding perfectly about this, but Infinite Campus doesn't go away. Parent Square gets integrated into Infinite Campus, and is there an extra cost for that, or is that part of, part of the subscription?
So Infinite Campus is our student information system, and we actually pay for some additional features through Infinite Campus, including things like online registration, the point of sale that we use to have students buy lunches or collect fees. And Messenger 2.0 is an additional feature that we pay for that is approximately $7,000. So we would be eliminating that subscription and then adding Parent Square as an additional subscription.
Is there any cost to integrate Parent Square with the data that, it looks like there's some data that will live in Infinite Campus that will get reported on through Parent Square?
Yes, so Parent Square will link with Infinite Campus to pull data to be able to have the most up-to-date information to communicate with families. And there is a one-time initiation fee that is built into that contract. I think it's like about $1,000. That's like the setup. Yep, and then that's it.
Pointing to data sources on Infinite Campus is covered by that.
Correct. Sorry.
All right, and finally, the strategic plan. We are back there.
Yes, earlier tonight, Mr. LaCroix in his infinite wisdom suggested that we should talk about whether or not.
Only agenda item I didn't get to, it's the very last one.
Kidding. I think, do we want to get this off the screen? Yeah, because we're no longer, okay, we're working on that. All right. So, Board, I've shared a memo with you about strategic planning, and I'm just going to briefly summarize it. One moment, I had it up. Okay, there we go. So, as you know, our current strategic plan was created in the spring of 2021. With the, the development of our newly written mission and vision and those values that I was talking about a little while ago, along with our goals. And tonight you heard an update on how we supported those goals this school year and how we plan to support them in the upcoming school year. When that plan was created, there actually wasn't an end date written. Although it is typical for a strategic plan and its goals to have a shelf life of about 3 to 5 years. So moving into this upcoming school year, we'll be on year 4, and you can see that we have plenty of work to do related to those plans. But board members have suggested that it's time to talk about when do we do strategic planning again. So what I provided you with was a list of what is coming up in the next couple of years. Now, this is what's coming up that we know about, right? There's always things that we don't know about. But I thought it would be useful to think about strategic planning, which is, takes a lot of board time and is a community engagement project in the screen of what we're doing for the next 2 years. So in the 24-25 school year, I listed out 5 different, I'm going to call them projects, but I can divide them really into 3 different buckets. The first has to do with our facilities projects. So in the fall, Mr. Wildman is going to be bringing to you the concept of how we finance those facility projects, and he's talked about that with you a bit. And so that's something that we'll be grappling with and thinking our way through. And then, in a much more time-consuming way, we'll be doing community engagement for those facility projects. So you'll remember that Wold Architects came and spoke with us about how next fall they will work with the community to identify what standards we will be looking for each one of our media centers that work to be completed in the summer of 26. But the work has to be started with the community next fall. So that's one area of work for next fall. Then we have 2 unions to negotiate with. So next year we'll be doing contract negotiations with Grays Lake Federation of Teachers, along with the, and then also PSRP, that's our support staff union. And board, you are familiar with negotiating with both of those unions together, but that is not what they want to do next year. Although I do not have any timelines yet from either one of those unions as to when they want to initiate those negotiations, I do know that they want to do them separately. So we will go through an entire negotiation cycle with one union and then an entire negotiation cycle with the other union. The final one is a conversation that you're going to have probably in the spring about whether or not you're going to be contracting with a search firm for a new superintendent, because as I have shared publicly through the last newsletter, I will be retiring on June 30th, 2026. And so, even though that's 2 years away, you're going to need to start thinking about hiring that new superintendent and may want to contract with this search firm, and if so, you're probably going to be interviewing search firms next spring. So those are the things we know about right now in 24-25. Okay, plus all those things that Amy talked about, right? That's the work. So what happens in 25-26? Well, you're going to actually be doing that superintendent search, and so that will be with community engagement for sure. Well, not for sure. I'm going to assume you're going to want to do some community engagement around what you're looking for in your next superintendent. And then that rolls into the summer of 26, where, as you learned at our last board meeting, that'll be the construction summer. So those are the big projects that we have coming up. And I thought you'd want that information as you thought through when you want to engage in strategic planning.
Can I ask you for another piece of information?
You can.
So there might be good and valid reasons for doing strategic planning at a certain time or another that have nothing to do with the timing of your retirement and the onboarding of a new superintendent. But from your perspective as a new superintendent to a district, would you rather be involved in the crafting of the direction of the goals, or would you rather come on board and execute on a set of goals that have already been created?
The answer is yes. Okay?
Wonderful, thank you very much.
Yeah, so I'll tell you the thing I really wouldn't want is to come in and need to start the process of strategic planning, okay? I think it is very useful for a new superintendent to come in and understand already what the community believes in, right? And what the goals are. It's hard for a superintendent to come in and kind of try to get the lay of the land and try to see, well, here's where I think we should be going next. A superintendent typically wants to understand what the goals are. Then the superintendent figures out how to execute those goals, right? So I'm gonna wonder if maybe you're asking for a recommendation about that? Yeah, yeah. Sure, exactly.
Path,
Yeah.
and not necessarily have published anything yet.
So here is what I think would be really useful. I'm thinking back to my own experience as your new superintendent, well, 5 years ago at this point. You hired me in January, didn't hire me. I mean, I signed a contract in January. I continued working my old job, but I was really happy to spend a lot of time here learning about the district, coming to board meetings, and getting involved. If the board chooses to use a similar kind of timing where you're, doing interviewing in the fall with hiring somebody, around January, we could engage in strategic planning in the spring. I would be delighted to be a part of that process. And then if the new superintendent is able, is local or can beam in some way, the new superintendent can participate in the process without having to guide it, right? That's a great way for a new soup to get to know the community. They can actually literally get to know people in that process and be able to start with a refreshed set of goals. So that is something that I think would make an awful lot of sense.
Rather go into let's get a great contract in place, right? Know that we're in a good place for the next 3 years with our unions. Start figure out who our next superintendent's going to be, and then then the what? My only question is, so we've got goals for 2024, 2025 already, and so you'll have to set one more set of goals for 25, 26 as that last year. Is there enough life?
Yeah, they're action steps, right? And the goals are, we believe, broad, because we talked about this today as a cabinet. The goals are broad enough that we believe that there is robust work that we'll be able to continue to do. And you saw, yes, there were some branches of those goals that dropped off that we were like, yep, we did that. But there are other areas that the work needs to continue. And you've seen that we have continued, when we see a need, we have continued the work and folded things into the goals. So our student services opportunity review is a perfect example of that. That wasn't something we were talking about when we did strategic planning 4 years ago, but it became something that we realized we needed to do. We did that, and the work is embedded within our current goal. So yes, if we felt like we were going to run out, I'd be telling you, yeah, no, we have to do it in the next year because we're going to be sitting around with nothing to do in 25, 26. But we don't believe that's true.
I think we did that strategic planning, and there's other items in there that became important to the community that we didn't touch on, right? I think we have the ability to pull some of those out, but we will constantly, for the next many years, have facility needs that need to get moved through. For sure. And we will constantly have economic, financial needs that need to get through, that can just be added in as we go along. And then at some point, for all the work that for curriculum has been done, some of that starts all over again, right? We do a 5-year refresh of the curriculum or a 10-year refresh of the curriculum. You kind of have to add that whole process back at the end there, and it just becomes something that's out in 2028, 29. So you could build out some of these things already, just based on knowing we have to revisit,
They're
Exactly.
perpetual. Yeah, I don't see the actual goal, I mean, the goals seem like they may be adjusted, but we always want to have a master facilities plan and a master technology plan, right? And that actually brings me to my last point, which is we started from scratch. I mean, we did mission, vision, values last time. My assumption is we're not going to go back and revisit our mission and our vision and our values. We might refresh them or reconnect with them, but we really don't start from what should the mission be this time. We build on it versus. So we start at a different point.
Can I I'm gonna make a comment on your mission, vision, and values. As a fire district, we used to go through those every year, and we would tweak them, change them, but what we found out is people didn't know what they were. And they didn't take time to learn them, because they knew next year they were gonna change. So you couldn't get to the point where you could get the buy-in of these mission, visions, and values, because they were constantly changing. You couldn't grab onto them and say, hey, this is where we're going. So on that aspect, like you said, you already have that base work. Should be leaving that in place for a period of time so that everybody understands where they're at.
Yeah, and an interesting exercise, and whoever we end up selecting to facilitate this work, it would be an interesting conversation with them, but I'm thinking that an interesting exercise for whoever we engage with would be to be looking at the mission, vision, and really maybe specifically the values, and to say, okay, what do these values mean to us now? And what is the work that is related to these values? And that might help pull out what new goal areas might be. So I think it'll be exciting. But yeah, I would love a new superintendent to have the opportunity to be involved if they're able. Yeah. Sound good?
Thank you. Sounds good.
All right, so that's the
Sounds good.
plan. So spring, right? As we're
Spring
saying,
of
spring
26.
26.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, topics for future agenda items?
Oh, yeah,
which
that's me again.
item we have
Hold
on the
on.
list?
Okay, so here's what we have. So our next board meeting is not until July 17th, so everyone enjoy your vacation. At 5 o'clock on July 17th, we are having our plaque ceremony, our ribbon cutting over at GMS, where we're going to celebrate the fact that our school district was selected by the Grays Lake Historical Society and the Village of Grays Lake to be the recipient of the On These Grounds plaque. So we're going to do that, and we're going to have cupcakes, I think, right? Little dessert. We always have to have dessert. All right. We've got a parent square action item. We just talked about that. We're going to do a presentation, and actually, Chris Wildman alluded to this a little bit when he was talking about the facilities goal, because he told you, yeah, we have done some assessment regarding solar options for the future. So we're going to be doing a presentation about sustainability and energy-saving options, talking both about, what we learned about solar options, also another opportunity for us, a different opportunity for how we can support energy-saving options through classroom lighting, and that includes ComEd incentives. Then there's the approval of the updated policy 7190. That's the behavior policy I was talking with you about. And then finally, board, this is really a question for you if you want this included. Dr. Mack has brought to me the interest of revising our board calendar for 24-25 because of the, I'm going to say it wrong, the EdRat,
The IASB.
IASB meetings, dinner.
Fall and dinner
Fall and,
meetings.
okay. So, and I believe, and so there are two that happen to be on board meetings that we have. They're in October and they're in March. I believe what happened this year, and somebody with better memory than me may correct me, but I think that this year in October when we discovered, oh, that's the same night as this meeting, we canceled a board meeting. So we only had one, and this upcoming year we have two scheduled, and then March also is a problem. So what we talked about is the possibility of planning for 24, 25, only having one meeting in October, but knowing about it in advance so we'd actually adjust the schedule so that it was kind of smack in the middle of the two dates that we had already scheduled. So we would consider moving it to October 16th. And then March, we actually only have one meeting anyway, but it's on the same night as this ISB meeting, so we could move that to March 19th. So, board, I'm asking you, number one, is that something you want to consider and you want to talk about? And number two, if you do you want to have that as a discussion item on July 17th, or do you want me to bring it as an action item and you can have that discussion and vote on it if you want? What do you want to do?
Yeah.
So bring it as an action item, just an updated calendar?
Yeah, if you all feel like you can get business in front of us with that, then I think that's fine.
We did talk about it as a cabinet, and knowing, look, there are many school districts that only have one board meeting a month, so it is doable. It just really helps to plan for ahead of time, so,
Way in
right?
advance, right?
Way in advance, so, okay. So we'll bring that, and that's what I have for July 17th.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. We do have a member of the public who signed up for public comment, I believe, so I will
Yes, Sarah Jennings.
press that button there.
So the four people I really am here for are to talk to the school board members. So you guys can just tune out if you want to. So Stephen, Christy, Jason, and Jim. So I had come to the last board meeting and talked about my concerns that drama and speech were no longer going to be offered to middle school students. So Jason, you had mentioned about a less optimal solution. That is less optimal solution, in my opinion, because we're getting it cut because Park doesn't have it. So I totally understand the one vision, one direction, totally great. Understand that there's going to be longer class periods. Here's my problem. I don't think the teachers are ready. I really don't. I don't think we're setting them up for success. A lot of teachers were not even aware of the block scheduling happening this next year. I was told as a parent the very last week of school that my child had to choose between band and being in these enrichment encore classes. So when I met with Ms. Gluckman and Ms. Gluck, which was fantastic, by the way, they stayed a really long time to answer all of my questions. And one of the questions I asked them was, what are you doing to prepare the teachers for these long 90-minute classes? That's a huge change. And they said that they have 2 summer, what is it called? Institutions, thank you. 2 teacher institutes. And I said, well, what are you getting them to come? Are they gonna get paid? Nope, they're not getting paid, it's just if they wanna come. Okay, I know as a parent, at least my experience, teachers don't even come to popsicle socials to meet their kids, at least at Meadowview. The few that did were the teachers who were really involved and fantastic. But then there were other teachers who were like, well, if you're not gonna pay me for 30 minutes, I'm not gonna show up. So to have 2 elected summer classes, to me, for an entire school year, is not setting the teachers up for success. There's not buy-in. and that's going to fail the kids. So that's why I'm here again, because I love what their thoughts are very true and pure. I think they really have the best of intention. I think it's important to note that District 46 has block scheduling. Maybe we want to be like them, but we have 2 different districts for a reason. The block scheduling works for kids who are very high advanced learners. Kids who are not as advanced struggle with longer class times. If you have ADHD, which a lot of kids do, we've talked about cell phones. That's like the #1 cause of ADHD right now. They're not able to sit for 90 minutes and be immersed. That's my concern. My concern is it's coming too fast without the parents knowing, without the teachers knowing ahead of time, without preparing them. And my fear is that it's gonna fall flat on its face. So I understand that we wanna try to do what, even District 127 is doing. Somebody said in this very meeting, it's different for them, they're older kids. It's different for District 127 because they're older kids. I just really want you guys to think about that, because I have really been struggling with my son not having drama. Somebody said, creating equity in learning. To tell kids that if they're in band and choir, they no longer get to have general music, art, or STEM, how is that equity in learning? To me, that's not equity. It's just not. And so now my son has to still choose. And I just think it's really unfair. Life isn't fair, I get it. If life isn't fair, then we should bring back drama for the middle school. Because just because Park doesn't have it, doesn't mean that we shouldn't have it. To me, taking that away was not an optimal solution. And I don't think parents know about it. I know for a fact parents don't know about it, about the longer class time. I know for a fact parents were told that their students had to choose between band and these encore classes, because I was one of them. So I really want you, the board members, to think about this. I've talked to parents. I've said, how can we get together? What can we do? Can we have a petition? I can't tell you how many parents would sign that petition today. I looked it up online. The only people who can overrule a superintendent is the school board. That's it. You guys are in a really tough position. I'm sure you're in situations like this before. I do not envy you at all. You guys do so much for our community, and I really, truly thank you. But I truly do not believe that our teachers are being set up for success with these longer class periods. I do not think it's creating equity in learning by telling my middle school child that he has to choose between band and these encore classes, which, by the way, we talked about cell phones. Cell phones are ruining our kids. We know this, right? We see it. General music, art, and STEM is giving our children other tools they're not getting in math and English and science. But now my child doesn't get those things because he chooses band. How is that equal? So this is like the driest room, I swear to God. I've been looking at all of your waters and I'm like, dang, there's no water in here. Is that water? Oh my God. I would like, can I have one? I almost was gonna pay somebody $20, but everyone's like half full over on here. Oh. I was even looking at the hand sanitizer over there. And I was like, should I? Probably not. And I'm shaking because I'm nervous. I don't talk in front of people like this, like ever. But I just really want you guys to think about this, because I truly want the best for our kids, like you guys do. And I know how strongly they want it. I really do. I want it too. I want our kids to be successful. But I want our teachers to be set up for that success. So that's really all I want, why I'm here. But I do want, since I'm here and I have maybe a couple more minutes, cell phones. You guys were talking about putting them in shelves. As a former teacher, that's going to take 5 minutes at the start of the class period, 5 minutes at the end. Total nightmare if I was a teacher. I used to teach in a school where if teachers saw a cell phone out at all, we had to take the cell phone, bring it to the front desk in the principal's office, and the parents had to come to pick it up. Talk about a lesson that they're not going to want to have to deal with their parents again. One parent came like 3 times, and the parent started to complain and said, well, how can we stop this? And the principal was like, well, tell your kid they can't bring their cell phone to school. So anyway, that was just kind of just a side moment. But anyway, I really want you guys to think about this because parents don't know. The parents do know are actually very upset because they were not talked about. There was no buy-in. They were not sold the idea. When I asked, I'm sorry, I'm going back to that, but when I did ask the 2 superintendent and Ms. Gluck, the first time I asked, they said that parents were involved. When I dug a little deeper, parents were involved for the encore classes and talking about multilingual and encore opportunities. And in the second email, parents were not involved. So I really want you guys to think about that. And that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Mrs. Jennings. Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Glickman?
Yeah, board, so you know that it is our protocol not to engage in conversation when there's public comment. So I can't do that, but I'm going to use the mechanism of talking with all of you just to make sure that you know that I'm glad to say that there somewhere along the line there was a misunderstanding, and I believe that, I'm guessing it is language that was used at some point about our summer work being voluntary for teachers. That's true. It's voluntary. We're not requiring teachers to come into work, but those who do, of course, we are paying them. So I'm just glad to share that with you. We would never ask our teachers to come in and learn about new processes and curriculum without paying them. So, and then the teachers who are not coming in for that, we will provide additional instruction during institute days and staff meetings and late start. And then I think, Mrs. Gluck, did you have something else to share with the board regarding the length of classes? I think.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify the length of classes for our cores is going to be 70 minutes. So the 90 minutes is at District 127, so for their block.
Just letting you know it's not going to be that long.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. We do have a small closed session this evening, so I'm going to make a motion to go into closed session in accordance with what I have to read here. Act 5, Illinois Code 120/2, paragraph C, subparagraph 1, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. I need a motion to move into closed session.
I'll second.
Okay, we do not anticipate doing any additional business outside of the closed session, so we will adjourn completely after that session is done.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman, and Braden.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.